Welcome back to Delta Hands. Libby Johnson paints with a constant awareness of the relatedness of shape and the contrast of shade. It has become a perspective on life.
If you sit down and just make even a little drawing of some place you've been, or even if you're in a hotel room and you draw the glass on the side of the table or something, it's like it makes moments that might otherwise be forgotten very concrete, and they never leave you. And so the idea of making a little drawing, or it doesn't matter what it looks like, it's just the idea of the process of making it, takes kind of mundane moments that you might forget and makes them really important. And it's a nice process. You know, whenever you paint from nature, you have to transform a three-dimensional space into a two-dimensional reality on the painting. I mean, painting becomes its own reality. It never will become three-dimensional. And I think once you know that, and once that becomes part of your thinking, that you never look at anything the same again. It really, truly was an epiphany when I found that out, when I saw that early on. My paintings really don't make a lot of sense in terms of light sources and that, and it's not really noticeable, I don't think. You know something's a little bit strange, but you're not really sure of what it is. And I think there's real power in that subtlety of having things not be quite right, but not being able to put your finger on what it is. You know, it's kind of I think to me, it's inviting because it's a lot of different color situations can occur in the same painting, that might not occur in nature, because most of these paintings are done when the sky is at its most extreme, which in nature would mean the bottom land is dark. The sun's way back in the back, and you wouldn't get any light on the earth. And so that would eliminate any possibility for there to be a color situation of interest in the bottom part of the painting. So I've learned to just sort of put a bunch of different things together. And so they still look real, though, I think. And that's important for me, too, is that they're a world that I've kind of made up, but it still is one that I feel like I could walk into. And while you can make illusion of any kind of imagery you want, if you don't remember at the same time that it is a two-dimensional world, it's not truly three-dimensional. It never will be. You can make a mile of space, the illusion of that in a painting, but if you close your eyes and rub your hand over the surface of the painting, it's still as flat as it can be. So when you start a painting, for instance, when I start the landscape paintings, I'm not thinking about the space that will be established later in the painting at all. I've got this flat surface, and I have to figure out a way to dissect the surface, dividing the painting into, instead of just one big flat surface, you put one line in, and then you have two shapes. And wherever that line goes is really important, and it can be dynamic or it can be not dynamic. And the first thing I do with the landscape paintings is do where the line where the sky meets the ground. And is it going to be down here? Is it going to be up here? And I keep moving that back and forth to find some dynamic situation that's going to occur just by making that one line, by dissecting the picture plane. Has nothing to do with space in the painting or illusion of space. It has to do really with one shape being next to the other shape and how those two shapes interact. I remember the day I found out about figure ground, which is this idea of having two shapes in a painting or anything that could balance each other out. And that when you make, say, if, for example, if you're going to draw a bottle in the middle of a painting that you're going to make, and it's a drawing of a bottle, that when you draw the bottle, you're not drawing just the bottle, but you're drawing the edge of the outside shape. And that if you don't think about what sort of shape you're making out of the background also, you know, your painting is just not going to be as energized. And I remember finding out about that. I never saw anything ever again the same. And it was just incredibly wonderful. And it's, I think it's probably the most important thing, regardless of, you know, what kind of art you do, is really crucial. And I usually spend a lot of time thinking about that. And also then there's the yin-yang idea that within the dark part there's a little light, but within the light part there's a little dark, but not enough to disrupt the fact that it's a dark part and a light part. And it's a wonderful kind of, you know, you can't have one without the other idea, which I really love. I think it's a real foundation for everything. You know, everything. I can't think of anything that it wouldn't apply to. When you can see those kind of underlying processes moving through all experience, it's really kind of a nice feeling. These paintings go through a lot of stages. The first thing is to divide the picture plane and see where the two shapes, or the basic two shapes, are going to be. The second thing is to then make a loose drawing of the clouds, the trees, all of that. Then I go in and I do a very loose underpainting that enters color into the composition. You know, it's all instinct, there's no rules, it just, every painting's different. And after that's done, I start the real sort of tedious process of going back into every area of the painting and really working very, very closely, you know, 2 inches away from the painting, to totally render each little area, which is a totally different process from the beginning of the painting. When you get 2 inches from a painting, you lose any reference to reality again, and you're just dealing with this little patch of color and texture again. So it's kind of like, if I step 2 feet back, I can see the illusion of the painting, but if I'm 2 inches away, it's total abstraction again, which I think is the most exciting thing about painting for me, is that you can hold on to total abstraction. You can be dealing with nothing more than color, shape, patterning, texture, and still it's yin-yang again. It flip-flops into an illusion of some world you've got also. So it's like this constant back and forth going on all the time, and it's really fun.